Welcome to the Mama Bear Family Care Mastermind Summit. I'm Sherilyn and I'll be hosting the summit. Today we'll be talking to Jan Allegretti, who is trained in veterinary homeopathy and has more than 30 years experience as a consultant in holistic healthcare for non-human animals and more than 35 years as an advocate for compassionate care for all species. She is an author. Her latest book is The Fresh and Flexible Meal Plan, the easiest, most nutritious way to feed your dog and cat. Her other books are The Complete Holistic Dog Book, Home Health Care for Our Canine Companions, and Listen to the Silence, Lessons from Trees and Other Masters. So to wrap it up, there's a couple of questions that I wanted to ask every expert toward the end of the interview. Is the reason I named this summit the Mama Bear Family Care Mastermind Summit is to get a variety of different perspectives on the mama bear concept. And what that type of energy means to me is making a decision to stand up for and insist on doing what's most important for yourself and your family, and making those things non-negotiable priorities, even if they may be difficult, challenging, or unpopular or out of the norm. Recognizing what's important and taking a stand for it and doing what it takes to make it happen. And that certainly seems like what it would take to make this kind of a shift. Especially if your animal companions are already having issues that you want to help, or if you've decided to make your family life more sustainable, or for whatever reason. So just to give people the motivation, I mean, you've obviously made that kind of choice in your life to make certain choices a priority. And how has that, in this context, contributed to your happiness and success, and also for your family, including your animal friends?
Boy, it's such a really important question, I think, for all of us, for our lives, about what choices do we make, and what is important, and what do we base our decisions on. And there are so many steps, so many places along the way in my life where I recognized that I had to make that choice. I think of the first one and more recent ones where I don't know about the first one, but I guess it's not the first one. The first one was I wanted to train horses. I wanted to be around horses, which I'd wanted since I could walk practically. And I finally got to where I had enough experience as a trainer where, I was doing that as in my work. And yet I first and foremost, I wanted to train horses in the kindest, most compassionate way I could, and care for them overall with the feed and their environment and their housing and outside time and all that, in the best way I could for them. But I couldn't do that when I was training horses in somebody else's barn. And so I needed to have my own place where I could be in control of all those choices. And so I was very fortunate that I was able to buy a piece of land, and I found a bank who, to my amazement, was willing to lend me a lot of money to build a barn. So I built this 34 stall barn and saddled myself with a $4,000 a month mortgage.
Wow.
To pay for it all. But I had my place, and I was able to build a barn in a way that I felt at the time, again, evolution. At the time where I was living in Illinois, most horses lived in a tiny stall with a tie stall, we called them. They had a halter and they were tied to the wall, and they had to stand there until somebody took them out. And, so I built the stall with 12 by 12. I built a barn with 12 by 12 stalls where they at least had room to move around. And today I would never put a horse in a stall, but at that time it was better, and it was part of my process. So I built this barn, and I had this tremendous mortgage and a lot of work to do to run it all. But it was what I felt was important. The priority was to take care of them the best I could. I realized pretty soon that I could not, and I guess I always knew that I couldn't train 20, 34 horses myself. So I was boarding horses, and then I wanted to bring in another trainer to help to do some training as well. And for a while, I had somebody whose values aligned with mine. She cared very deeply for the horses and was very kind to them. She eventually got her own barn. I was never able to find anybody else whose approach to training was acceptable in my eyes. And so, there were other people who wanted to bring horses in there, but I would not tolerate horses being treated the way that I knew they would treat them. And so I refused to let that happen, which made it very, very difficult to pay a $4,000 a month mortgage. I made it work for a while. It was really hard, but I eventually decided I couldn't sustain that. And so I ended up having to sell it. And it kind of boiled down to that decision, or if I had been willing to bring in other people and compromise that compassion issue, it would have been a lot easier financially. But it was the right choice. And I felt right about that. And there were so many of those kinds of things along the way. Making the shift into holistic care was, it was just one of many ways where I've often gone against the grain, gone against the mainstream. I was back in the Midwest in a very conservative, very conventional community, and they did not think highly of my approach to training or my use of homeopathy and herbs and that sort of thing. And so I was a bit of an outcast. I came to California and kind of found my community here where lots of people do that sort of thing. But then again, it's always been about evolving and seeing things more deeply and seeing things in a different way. And not once it's as though once you see something new, for me, it's hard to go back. I can't unsee it. It's like you were saying about the diet. All of a sudden, it never occurred to you that you should feed fresh, whole, unprocessed food, lots of variety to your dog or your cat. And all of a sudden you see it and it's like, oh my gosh, yes. And it's that kind of thing, and so, not very many people accepted this idea when I first started talking about it, but, again and again, more people, as people are looking at it and trying it, they understand that it makes sense. But for me, I've been feeding this way for quite a long time now, and I've seen the benefits. But a funny thing happens when you write a book. You always learn more when you write a book. You write a book usually because there's something you want to share, but in the process of putting it down on pages, you learn more about it too. And it just in the courses of reading it and immersing myself in it for months and months, I can't unsee that. I can't. It's so clear to me how valuable and important it is that I really have to make it a primary mission now to share this, because I know animals are healthier because of it, and also because I believe I have learned and know that it elevates the relationship, as we talked about. And so I have to make that a priority in my life, and no, it's not widely accepted yet. Hopefully it will be at some point, but it's at risk of being shunned and ridiculed, because you can't tell people not to feed a packaged food that's got that stamp of approval on it. It's risky, but it's actually, I know that it's actually safer, and I know what the benefits are. And so yeah, it's about seeing what I believe is valuable and important and making a choice, and deciding that, it's not always going to be easy, but it's worth it. It really is worth it, because then you build a life that is consistent with what and feel in your heart and your bones is the right thing to do. And that in itself brings a lot of joy. Puts you in tune with your life and your world, puts you in tune with what's, the natural flow of things, which I think we're all we're pulled along by that, aren't we? That we're sort of the natural world draws us into being more of who we're meant to be, I think, in that way. And so it's pretty remarkable process.
Yes. So beautifully said. Thank you. And that leads into the last question perfectly, actually, about eco-friendly living. What that means to me is more than the way it's usually talked about. What eco-friendly living means to me is living in harmony with the realities of the world around us, especially the reality of nature, as you just mentioned, recognizing how we and our earth is made, recognizing how animals are made. Instead of fighting against it, which seems to make things a lot harder and really doesn't work, especially in the long run. So in other words, it's recognizing how we fit into the larger system, or the ecology of the system, as a way to get the most powerful results. So it seems to me that what your work is, especially, also including the feeding aspect, that helps us be more aligned with the realities, even if some of them might be even temporary realities, such as hopefully the toxicity in our world is a temporary reality that won't always, we will overcome that eventually. But in the meantime, things are the way they are, and especially being in harmony with nature, it seems to be a big part of what you do and what you teach. And so what I wanted to talk about is how that alignment is empowering to us, because the way it seems to me is that, like you said, it's for one thing, it's like, why make things harder than they have to be for us? And so a lot of this unnatural approach of, the conventional things we're taught are so unnatural, that it's like we're fighting against reality, actually, more than just nature. It seems to me, fighting against reality. So it seems empowering to me to become more in alignment with that, have our lives resonate more with that. How do you see that aspect of empowerment?
Well, that's such an interesting question. Do we have another couple hours?
Yeah, right. I'll have to have you on again.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. There's so many elements of that really ring true for me. I'm really glad you raised that whole topic. I agree with you very much that, we as humans, we like to be in control of things, and we're we're innovative, and we like to come up with new ideas, and how can we create something that's going to make things easier or faster or something. And very often that takes us away from the natural processes of things like the diet. But I see again and again and again that when we do that, we do make things harder for ourselves, just as you say. It's just like we come up with this, somebody came up with this quick and easy way to feed our dogs and cats. It involves a bunch of kibble, and we scoop it out and put it in the bowl, and boom, we're done. And okay, that's easier. But 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, we're finding that our animals are sick and getting sicker younger, and as you mentioned, showing us the same kinds of illnesses that humans have when they eat ultra processed unhealthy foods. And so we made a bunch of trouble for ourselves by doing that sort of thing. And so many of the things, like the toxicity in our environment is another example of that. When we forget about the natural order of things, we make trouble for ourselves. And when we disconnect, my very first book, Listen to the Silence, is ultimately, it's about going out in the world, outside your home, or if you live in the middle of the city, sitting next to a potted plant, if that's all you have that's green and growing, and just being with that natural living thing and reconnecting with it. I believe that everything that the vast majority of troubles that we have in our world today have to do with disconnection from the natural world. I think they can all be traced back to that to one degree or another. I think that a lot of the anxiety that we feel, a lot of the rage that we see in our culture these days, and a lot of the discontent and the depression, I think a lot of it ultimately is traceable to disconnection with the natural world. Because, when you mentioned the indigenous communities before, who live in harmony with the natural world, and again, tying it into the use of language we talked about. I remember learning long time ago that most Native American languages do not have a word for spirituality, which I thought was really odd, because I had already come to learn that they're very spiritual people. But it's because they don't separate spirituality from the rest of their lives. It's not a separate entity. I was raised, I was raised Catholic, and in our version of Catholic, we went to church on Sunday mornings and really didn't think about it much the rest of the week. And I remember I remember asking my mother when I was very young, I feel like I can talk. Why do I have to go to church to talk to God? I feel like I can talk to God when I go out and sit under a tree. Why can't I just do that instead of going to the church building, So I apologize for a very long web of an answer here, but it ties together so many things that we've talked about, that we are not at the pinnacle of some hierarchy in the natural world. We are not separate. People think our language is often has elements of it about, okay, I'm going to go out and be in nature this weekend. We are nature. We are part of it. We are of this, just like the trees are, and just like the wolves are, and the fish. We're just part of it as much as they are. And when we disconnect from that, we feel alone and isolated, because we are, we separate ourselves from our family, from our larger organism of our being, you might say. And so when we can reconnect with that and do things more in alignment with the natural world, it brings peace, it brings sustenance, it brings joy, it brings mysticism sometimes. And it brings nurturing for everybody. So much of our culture, of our Western world, is very destructive of everything that is not human. We exploit and use a lot of other species and the earth itself for our purposes, and in destructive ways that they're harmful for a lot of other beings. And so, and I believe that is destructive to our soul as well, to our inner being, whether we realize it or not. So when we can step out of that and do less of that, it's pretty difficult to be completely separated from that destructive way of life and live in our society. But if we can minimize that and think more in terms of how we can live in harmony, and how we can live in ways that sustain other species besides just our human species, we're all elevated. They're better, and we're so much better. People talk a lot about dogs as being the wonders. It's so wonderful to have a dog because they give you unconditional love. And yes, they do. And yes, that's fabulous. But I have learned that one of the greatest gifts that I think my dogs and cats and the ravens around here and the deer and all of them, they show me my capacity to love. They allow me to open my heart with defense, in a defenseless way, in a way that's unafraid. I don't have to protect myself. With a dog who's present like that, and the joy that they bring and the love that they open in my heart, I make that meal for them. And yes, they love it, and it's something I do for them, but I'm the one who I get to feel that love in my heart when I do it, right? And it's the same thing to me, for somebody to come into my family and give me the opportunity to feel love for them, there's nothing greater, there's nothing more divine than that. It's that sense of love that connects us. And so when I can bring that sense of wonder and love and appreciation to the natural world, that's the greatest gift that I have. That's what connects me to the divine. And that's, what becomes my spiritual practice, as that deep spiritual connection. And it's really just about loving and caring and nurturing and tending and looking at whatever is around us, whoever is around us, and thinking in terms of what are their needs, how are they feeling, are they peaceful, are they happy, are they thirsty, are they stressed, and can I at least have empathy for that, or at best do something to help mitigate it. That's what is nurturing for me, at least as much as it is for them. And if we can build that into our lives, it's just empowering. And I don't even remember what your first question was now, but it's a way of empowering us to make the world better, to make our own lives better, and to make choices that feed all of us, and continue that evolution forever.
Wow. That's perfect. I mean, you've given me chills several times during our conversation. Beautiful.
Well,
Thank you so much for such thoughtful and thought-provoking answers, and really enlightening us all with the wealth of information and experience you have.
well, your questions are amazing, Sherilyn, and your work is amazing, and I'm really so appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you. You're doing really, really wonderful work, and it's been so much fun to have this conversation. I'm really glad we were able to do it.
Oh, thank you so much. So am I. So, for the audience, I want to let you know that Jan has generously provided for a free gift for you all, and we'll have a link here on the page where you can access that free gift to get started right away with some of the things that she's been talking about. And Jan, can you let us know and let the audience know where they should go to find out more about your work?
Sure. My website is at holisticaha.com. Holistic AHA stands for Holistic Animal Health and Advocacy, but you don't have to type that all out. Just holisticaha.com.
Interesting. Thank you. And then your book, The Fresh and Flexible Meal Plan, is available on Amazon, correct?
Yes, and any bookstore can order it. If it's not already in your
Okay.
bookstore, ask them to order it and maybe stock a few extra copies for somebody else to come and find as well.
Yes. Okay, great. And it's interesting you mentioned holistic. The way that I was reading that before I knew what it stood for is holistic aha, because it's like aha moments, right?
Yeah, I hope that's better than ha 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 ha.
Right.
I'm
Okay,
glad you
well,
read it that way.
yeah, it kind of fits too. Well,
Good.
thank you so much. And I would love to maybe have you on again in the future sometime, because there's just so much to talk about.
There is. We could talk for a very long time, and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I would be very, very pleased to come and do this again.
Okay, thank you.